Good evening. I'm Matthew Ngalawakandoa.
And I'm Geraldine Sen.
Friday was marked as the Chinese Lunar New Year, which is the beginning of the Year of the Dog. The Chinese community in Fiji has existed since the 1800s and has contributed a lot to our continuous growth in trade and investments, cuisine, agriculture, cultural diversities, and economic opportunities, as well as fostering healthy bilateral ties with China. With us tonight to talk more about this, I have Dixon Sito, a Fijian businessman and an influential leader of the Chinese Association of Fiji. Good evening and thank you for coming on the show, Mr. Sito.
Thank you.
One thing, and I want to touch on this a little later on in the show with the Year of the Dog, I wanted to know about the history of the Chinese community in Fiji, how it all began.
Well, we celebrated not very long ago, and we had a very large public event at the Sukuna Park celebrating the 160th arrival of the Chinese in Fiji.
Yeah.
And the Prime Minister was our chief guest. And we had, I guess, the celebration of the first Chinese who came to Fiji was a gentleman called Moi Baling, who started the Hong Li clan in Fiji. He started off in Levuka, where the former capital was. Mm-hmm. And from there, the Chinese community grew. There are reports that there are Chinese who have come here before, but they didn't come here to settle. They were mainly, I would say, traders who traded in, at that time, saddlewood and beech timber, which Fiji was famous for. So we're probably the oldest migrant community. When you look at it from that time, it probably 165 years when the first Chinese set foot in Fiji and settled here.
And this is not just within Viti Levu, but other parts of the outer islands included.
Exactly, you're right. The Chinese were mainly traders,
yeah.
And many of the old Chinese trading companies, Wing On Tai and On Hua Chang, Quang Tai, they had, I guess, trading posts in all the different islands. Mm-hmm. And at that time, they were collecting some of these commodities, including copra. So they had people who were operating these stores in all the different islands and in the main centers of the main islands as well. As a result, we have quite a spread of Chinese throughout Fiji, and the Chinese are very good at integrating, so they intermarried, and so we have a lot of our they married the Itaukei people, and many of them are our brothers and sisters now, and they're all over Fiji, and many of them carry the name of their father, and that's very evident as you move around Fiji.
Happy Chinese New Year, by the way. It marks the Year of the Dog. That would mean that this lunar festival happens every 12 years. Now, since it's the Year of the Dog, what would that mean for people who are born under this particular sign?
Yeah, as we were saying, a dog, the characteristics of the dog personified in the lunar year, mm-hmm. The dog's most defining characteristic is their loyalty. I mean, you can look at it as men's best friend, so that's a thing. And they never abandon their friends and family or the people at work. They are very honest, popular in social circles. I mean, this is according to the lunar calendar. And everyone needs a friend for advice and help. They're also good at helping others. They are very straightforward and genuine kind of people. That's people born in the Year of the Dog, and I'm told your father's like that.
Yes, that's true.
One thing I wanted to know is why animals? Why do you have representation with the animals, like the pig, the dog,
the monkey?
The monkey.
Yeah. Well, this is the lunar calendar, and I guess it starts off in mythology, where you have these signs, and I guess over the years they seem to have found support and belief. And it's funny because many of the characteristics in the year that you're born in seem to be personified in the person itself, whether you follow that or it's a divine thing. But it's a calendar we follow. I mean, you got the other calendar that we use a normal business day, but this is a Chinese lunar calendar that we also follow, and because of that we follow the various festivals that are within that year as well.
So if people are, obviously, those who are born in the year of the dog, it's a good luck year for them. What about the other sides? Do they prosper from the year of the dog as well? Or do they get some kind of good luck out of it?
Well, you know, like with anything in this world, people are very optimistic. They look at the good side of each lunar sign. And there are obviously some downsides, but they tend not to be magnified as the good traits of that lunar year. So in all the signs the zodiac signs, people tend to focus on the good parts.
The good.
And I think that's what we should be doing as well, and to make Fiji a better place. You know, we focus on the positives, and I think that's the way the Chinese. They're very optimistic kind of people. They forge ahead and they look at what are the positives.
Speaking of celebrations, we've had many different communities and also different organizations around the country that have done their part to show that they are also trying to celebrate along with the Chinese community. You've had business organizations holding teas, having special celebrations within their shops and all. Is there any major event that has happened in the past week that you'd like to highlight?
Yes, certainly. We had a very major celebration. It was meant for the Sukuna Park. Then we had Cyclone Kita. So we had to shift it. And the purpose of having a Sukuna Park, where we also celebrated the 160th anniversary of the arrival of the Chinese, was to give it a much broader, exposure of the Chinese New Year. But the weather was against us, because it would have meant the involvement of a lot more people in the public. We advertised it. Unfortunately, last minute, including using your station, we had to shift because of the weather to the Yat-sen Hall. That is also a good move, because the Yat-sen Hall, we involved a lot more of the children from the school, where they study the Chinese culture and language. But we had a lot of people. Our chief guest for that major celebration was His Excellency the President, and we also had the new Chinese ambassador, Mr. Bo. He was also our VIP, and all the leaders of the different Chinese groups were present, and as a result, we got the involvement. It was a very inclusive kind of thing, and we had a couple of people from the West. A lot of the parents and the Chinese community, whether they're farmers or shopkeepers, participated well. We had a lot of prizes donated by various sponsors. So we make it a very family-orientated function with prizes. And we also, one of the things about the Chinese is, especially during New Year, is that we tend to respect our elders. So there was a segment in the program where if you're over 80 years old, you were given a red packet as a mark of respect for the contribution that you made to the community and being an elder. So that was quite an event, and the president handed out these red packets to our elder folks. And we also had a cultural group organized by the China Cultural Center, who performed cultural dances and had gymnastics and jugglers. And so it was a very colorful and interesting event that day. Apart from the fact that we also had food for lunch, just to make it a complete occasion.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sito. We'll just go to a quick break now, and then we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. Now, Mr. Sito, you spoke about those red packets that you gave to the elderly. What is the significance of the red, the color red?
Well, I guess like with any culture, red is a significant. The significance of red is it's bright. It means prosperity. It signifies all things good. As opposed to like during the Chinese New Year time, you wouldn't wear black like your suit. You would wear something like what I'm doing now, a red,
right,
and what the young lady is wearing, red. So it signifies happiness and all the things good that we talked about, the positive side.
Yeah.
So the red packet is more the significance, the color, and also sometimes it has writings on it that has all the New Year greetings and all the good sayings that come with the New Year, you know.
So these red packets, of course, it's not about the money that's inside. It's more a somebody wishing someone well, or wishing them prosperity, wealth, happiness in the next year. And these are generally given to young kids, but it can also apply to elders and, of course, you know, your family members, workmates, of course, and just anyone in the community. Am I right?
That's right. Generally, generally it's for the young kids. Yeah, young kids. We're given by the parents or by the uncles and aunts. And it's sort of, again, showing in the new year, you know, generosity and sort of an act of kindness and things like that. So, and sharing, you know, and the red packet. And obviously, kids, it's become a tradition, and they expect this from their elders. We did it also with the elders as a mark of respect for them. And this is something that in the Chinese tradition, respecting not only elders but also your ancestors, you know, because on that particular day, a lot of them actually perform ceremonies that respect the people who have gone before them, and respecting, you know, the ancestors, and also praying to the deities that who, you know, bestow them good fortune and look after them.
So these,
Speaking of bestowing good fortune, around the country we have noticed that businesses that are not necessarily Chinese-based, they are also incorporating all of these traditions. For example, they have hung the red packets out there. They've got celebrations happening. Would you like to touch a little bit more on that and how it seems to foster a spirit of not only acceptance but also bringing in good fortune for them?
Yes, yes. Well, this time, yesterday and today, the Chinese Youth Social and Cultural Association, our youth group from the community, would be doing the lion dance in the streets. And they've been doing this for many years. And the purpose of this is they visit the shop and to drive out the evil spirits and to clean the shop so that it's ready for the new year, for prosperity and everything good. And they used to do this with the Chinese shops who believed in this custom. Then the other shopkeepers saw this, and they've now become part of the people who have requested for the Chinese youth group to visit their shops as well. And generally, like the red packet, the lion cleans the shop, walks around the shop, and comes out and takes the red packet, which is like, again, an offering, you know, and a thank you that you've done the job for us. And obviously it must have worked very well because many of the and it's a good thing because it's a multicultural, multiracial thing, and all the shops now participate. It's not only the Chinese shops, and it's a good thing because it brings about cultural acceptance and cultural awareness that we live in a multicultural society, and I think this is a good thing. Where we also, because we're a minority community, but we do have our place there. And this showcases, I guess, the positive aspects of the Chinese community.
and the fact that different shops are participating in the Chinese New Year, that sort of like begs the question, why isn't there a public holiday for Chinese New Year in Fiji? You know, we have Diwali, we have Easter, and I believe Islamic faith also practices Eid, and everyone has a particular holiday that coincides with those particular days. But with Chinese New Year, I'm just going back to the fact that you said that the Chinese community has been the longest migrant community in the country. So is there any reason as to why that is? Because I believe in China they celebrate it for 5 days?
Yes, they celebrate it for a long period of time, and they have a public holiday.
Yeah.
Talking about China, we're aware that this is the biggest migration of people at any one time in the world, because the airports, the bus stations, the railway stations are jam-packed with millions of people going home to celebrate Chinese New Year with their family. And this has been the tradition. And you're talking about a public holiday. Yes, we are the oldest migrant community in Fiji, and we have played our role in nation building. Perhaps our numbers are small, but our numbers are growing rapidly now. And there might be a case, and we will certainly talk to government about this, because this, again, as a component of the Fiji community, it's a good thing. There might be a case for a public holiday or half a public holiday. But definitely the Yatsen school, the primary school had I'm advised that they had a holiday yesterday just to celebrate the Chinese New Year. And I think that is, with any major celebration, and I think you mentioned about some of the others, a public holiday just adds more significance to the event.
What with the Yatsen Primary School that had a public holiday, sorry, not a public holiday, they had a day set aside for them to observe. Of course, you don't just have Chinese students that go there, different races, children,
Correct.
they all go there. Is there any plans for the Chinese community to try to reach out to other schools and try to have some sort of outreach programs or educational programs, awareness programs, to give a little bit more information to youngsters today about it? We happen to have that for other cultural events like Diwali. They happen to celebrate that in Indian schools. With Easter, you have maybe a half-day celebration happening. What about for Chinese New Year?
Well, that's certainly an idea that we can carry forward. It hasn't happened like that. But definitely in terms of the Chinese culture, the Yatsen School is a prime case, and we also have the Confucius Institute at the USP teaching Chinese culture and Chinese language, and as part of it, the Chinese New Year significance of it would be part of what they actually teach the kids. Yeah, it's a good idea. You're right that the Yatsen School, the percentage of Chinese students there, or of Chinese extract, would be well less than half. So it's a very multiracial school with all the different communities, and it's a good thing, because as kids go through the Yatsen School, they learn a lot about the Chinese culture, because we have specialized teachers who teach the Mandarin language and the Chinese studies as well. So it's a good thing, and it's a school of demand as well. A lot of people want to send their kids, and I think the significance of the learning the Mandarin language has international value. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll just go to a quick break right now, and then we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. Now, Mr. Sito, it's no secret that in the world of business, learning Chinese can be a great advantage, whether it be Cantonese or the dialects, like Cantonese or Mandarin. How does the the Chinese Association of Fiji help regular Fijians who are interested in learning Chinese?
Well, we have a number of Chinese associations. I guess the umbrella association, the Chinese Association of Fiji, which coordinates the planning of some of these national events. And that's headed by Jenny Sito. She's the president. But we also have the Chinese Education Society that has been in existence for a long, long time. The Yatsen School, it started a long time ago. It used to be only primary school, where I went to, and now the secondary school stream. The reason why that school was formed was that because the early Chinese could not get into any other school. There was a discrimination policy, so they started their own school. I mean, any community would want their kids, and education is a very key part of the Chinese culture. That even if you're poor, you have to educate your kids first, because they believe that education would be a step. And I guess this is a government's policy to break the poverty cycle. And so Yatsen does in the old days it was Cantonese. We were taught Cantonese in those days. It's now Mandarin, which is a universal Chinese language. USP also has a Confucius Institute, which teaches various levels of Mandarin, conversational and reading and writing. So, and they have expanded their campuses all around the Pacific. Well, and there's also a Chinese school in Lautoka, and they do some Chinese studies there. So, I think as we get more and more Chinese visitors here, there's a need for more Mandarin speakers in terms of the labor force. And given China's growing global influence and their importance in the world, understanding the Mandarin language, spoken and written, is a great asset. And I know many international companies, multinationals, are looking for people with that skill. So we're doing it in our way. I think it's gathering momentum, but definitely a very important language.
Speaking of language, it would come in handy in terms of business investments, foreign investments that is, whether you have foreign investors from China coming into Fiji or for local businesses trying to invest in China. What would you suggest for businesses who have never had any interaction with China and the language and anything like that, and they'd like to invest in China, or maybe foreign companies that would like to invest in Fiji, especially Chinese companies?
Well, the investment process here in Fiji is through Investment Fiji, and they now have Mandarin speakers and people who understand the Mandarin written language as well, which is a great help because we are getting more and more investors from China, and not only investors, but we also have a lot more enterprise. You see a lot of these projects, the major infrastructure projects, is by Chinese companies. So I think that is of great use. For people wanting to invest in China, I guess the first stop I would recommend would be for them to check this out with the Chinese embassy, get some leads. Also, they would need to have good contacts in China, and again, the Chinese embassy would be of great help. And some of us, even tourism people now, are going, and even our own company, are going to China to the fairs to see what is available. They have some very, very competitively priced products and services and many companies here, including hardware companies, are importing from there. So that's a two-way trade. They are doing investment here, doing a lot of infrastructure work. But we are involving more and more Chinese companies now in terms of trading. It almost like going back to the old days where with the sandalwood and the beach that we talked about. Yeah, there is this strengthening relationship, not only economic, but certainly from the days where there was a change in the government. The political, I think, relationship is getting even stronger. And talking with the new ambassador lately, he's out to make sure that relationship is strengthened even more, and the partnership is is given more attention.
So, with that being said, what are some of the community projects or the ways that the Chinese Association of Fiji gives back to the community in Fiji?
Well, what we do is we try to, as far as possible, we have two major events in the year. One, which we just talked about, is the Chinese New Year celebration. That's the biggest event that we celebrate. We also celebrate the Moon Festival, and we normally dovetail that with the China National Day. That's in October. And these are the two major community-type projects that we have. And it involves all the different associations and provincial associations, and including, as I mentioned, the Tungkun Society, that's a provincial kind, and also the education people, everyone. And we also do charity work, like, we have a close relationship with the Father Law Home. The history of that used to be, Father Law was a Chinese priest. It was an old people's home for Chinese, but it's now, you only have about 1 or 2 Chinese there now. But our association has been such that we still go and visit them and support them. And and whenever we have a major festival, we would also share the food with them. And sometimes we would bring the residents, and come and participate in our functions. We also, being, I guess, culturally minded, we have 2 days where we visit the cemeteries to respect our ancestors. One in the early part of the year, one in the later part of the year. And we also do that. We have 3 main cemeteries, 3 main cemeteries in Suva. One near the Tamvua Bridge, one in Reservoir Road, and one in Nasinu. So we do all the rituals, and we, collect money, and much of the leftover food there goes to, it goes to the Father Law Home, and that's on those major occasions. But we also look at people in other places, we like different people support people, even we support someone in the Home of Compassion, but these are things that you keep private, you don't boast about, but we do a lot of things like that. Many of them help the school.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sito. We'll just go to a quick break right now, and then we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. As we were talking about, Mr. Sito, with trade, investment, when the Chinese community first came in. Now, in the late 80s and early 90s, there was an increase in Chinese immigrants into the country. And this was an improved investment because the investments that they brought in, government investments were improved from there. What sort of investments did they bring in?
Well, in the old days, the investment was very much on a very small scale,
Yeah.
Except for the large trading houses I talked about. There were a few, most of the Chinese people work for, and in the different places in Fiji. But many of even today, many of the Chinese people are involved with their own shops, their restaurants and takeaways, but many now are involved in the professional field, because as the kids come back from studies, you look at them, and many of the top people in the accounting field are from the Chinese community. Many are top lawyers, many are doctors. So it's not any one particular field. They're now right across the board. We're very much part of the fabric of Fiji, in every corner. Myself in tourism, things like that. A lot more of the kids, the children have come through now, are more into they like the professional kind of work, yes.
So
with family businesses, those
Yeah.
are they dying out, or is there no one carrying through? For example, if there's a family business that was carried on for generations, and the children are now, say, for example, engineers or doctors, or they happen to move away from the family business, they wouldn't want to carry on the baton or the torch. What would happen to businesses like that?
Well, unfortunately, many of those businesses have
Close down?
closed down. They've gone away. Some of the major trading houses that used to be household names in Fiji are no longer here. That's caused in part by migration as well. But many of us who are staying here, continue. And we participate in different areas, like I said, mainly in the professional side. But there are many still in the market gardening area. There's still people who are in the restaurants, in the corner shops and all that. So they still perform a very integral part of the economic activity in this country. They fill that gap.
Speaking of economic activity and migration, with the Chinese New Year celebrations, of course, there's a lot of migration of the Chinese members into Fiji and out of Fiji to go visit family members, to spend time and with the celebrations and whatnot. What does that mean for tourism for Fiji and for maybe China itself, with our Chinese members going over to see family?
Well, I think it's more inflow, because I think there are some families. I know some Chinese families from Fiji who have gone back to China, to their villages or to their relatives in China, but it's not a big thing now, as we become more and more integrated into Fiji, our families here. But certainly tourism has great potential. You read recently that Rosie Holidays chartering Fiji Airways Airbus, bringing in people from Hangzhou, 2 flights, and that's a good thing, because it shows that potential of people coming into Fiji as tourists is there. And while we have services for the Chinese out of Hong Kong and Seoul, the day will come when we have direct services that'll bring in, I think, much larger inflows, because at the moment the number of Chinese visitors, they are number 4 in terms of the number of visitor arrivals after Australia, New Zealand, US. It's China, and it's almost 50,000 in a year. So that's a significant number in a year, and the Chinese, when they come here, they're a very attractive tourists that most countries want, because they spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the value of a visitor is the foreign exchange that they generate and the economic activity, because they do all the rest of the things that other people do, contrary to belief that they do tours, they buy, but generally they're great shoppers. And that sort of adds to the economy. And a lot of countries are now welcoming and sort of liberalizing their access so that they can come in, and hopefully Fiji, we will definitely be looking at that in the near future to get more Chinese visitors.
What about Chinese families who are planning to migrate to Fiji? How does the Chinese Association of Fiji help assist with that?
Well, we don't normally get involved with the actual migration side, because they decide the business and they come here. But generally, what the Chinese Association and the other associations that I belong to, like the Trade Federation and things like this, whenever they need assistance or advice, or they get into a problem with a department or with certain areas of government, we will try and step in and assist. Sometimes it's because they don't have the awareness of the rules and regulations.
Yeah.
So mostly with integration and assimilation.
Yes, we try to do that because you see, one of the important things here with our community is a very good point, that we try to, and this is what the new ambassador, Chinese ambassador, is trying to do as well with us, is to integrate the people who have come recently
Yeah.
and the people who've been here for 2 or 3 generations, right, or even more. And it does take time. I'm sure that when our ancestors came here, they found it difficult. But in those days, they didn't have anyone like us to assist. But here, we now always put out a helping hand. So they know where to come to. And we also have a sister agency to assist people like that. But whenever they come to us, we do understand the English language, and we do have the reach and the contact sometimes to assist in facilitating resolution to problems or even training. Like, for instance, we've had training sessions with some of these new traders and business people on tax. We've had Inland Revenue, we've had the Commerce Commission, and then we've had previously the City Council, the Labor Department. See, many of them are not quite aware. They come in and and that's where they sometimes fall foul of the regulations. But I have to say that whenever we've stepped in to help, we've been able to resolve the situation, and with the help of the different agencies we deal with. So yeah, you're right. We do that integration. We help, and as a community, we help them because they don't have anywhere to go to, and worse still, they're not fluent in the English language. So we have people in our community that are bilingual, and that's how we really sort of help them integrate quicker and do their business better.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sito. We'll just go to a quick break right now, and we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. Now, Mr. Sito, with everything that we've spoken about, it's so obvious that there's a rich Chinese history here in Fiji. Do you have any sort of publication that anyone can access to know more about this?
Yes, there are a number of publications available, some written by overseas people, and there are different books on the history of the Chinese in Fiji. But a more recent one, which is compiled by us locally, and featuring all the writers from Fiji.
Different families.
Yeah. And it showcases the history of the Chinese, and it talks about Moi Balin, and it talks about, also gives you a rundown of the different associations and organizations in Fiji, and also talks about the history of the Chinese, how they evolved, it came as traders and some of the main trading houses, and also the interesting important thing is that it also showcases the pioneering families from that time. So you can read about these guys who came and set up their business, and who their kids are now, and you can see some of their kids now in public life today. And also it has a section on some of the more, I guess, prominent Chinese in Fiji today, but it's a history of, it's almost a good wrap-up of the Chinese community in Fiji if you want a good book. It's a 160th anniversary of the arrival of the Chinese in Fiji, and it's available around in Yongtong and different places. Yeah, and it's roughly.
And is Yongtong the only place one can?
No. You can always contact us, or I think it's probably still available. It's also available, I think, I'm not too sure, at the USB library.
Okay.
But certainly those of people who are interested in that, and we're finding a lot more people are now, as they know about the book, they want it. Yeah.
What's the title of the book again?
The book is, from memory, is about the 160th anniversary of the arrival of the Chinese in Fiji. Yeah, and it costs around about $20 for a copy, so it's not going to break the bank.
Yeah.
But it does have it's a treasure trove of information on the Chinese in Fiji, going back to when we first came, the 160th anniversary of us arriving into Fiji. So it's well worth reading, and it features, and the thing is that you tend to forget about the pioneers and the hard work that they did to establish the community, and the hard work they did to establish, I guess, Fiji to what it is today, because they definitely contributed. The Chinese did definitely contribute to the economic development of Fiji, and many of them have done also very good social work. And they've, in the book it also tells you the achievements and also the honors that have been bestowed on the Chinese people by the government, and we're thankful for that. That there's some recognition of what we do, and I guess not that people do things to get recognition. It's just that they do it. Like the people who started the school and things like that, and donated land. I mean, these are real benefactors.
What with Fiji being a multicultural country, and with that publication coming out by local authors and about local people, it would be a good idea to recommend it to maybe the ministry to have it incorporated into the syllabus for local children to get a little more idea about the rich history of the Chinese in Fiji.
That would be a very good idea. We would certainly talk to the education people, and many of these articles are written by the families themselves. And it's a collation. It's a collage of the different stories in history. Very interesting.
So with Chinese New Year that was celebrated on Friday the 16th, I understand that there's still a couple more days of celebration left. What would happen? What would these celebrations entail?
Well, for us, the main one was, as I said, last Sunday when we had the big one incorporating all the different groups and at the school, and the president was there, and the Chinese ambassador, and all the Chinese leaders. Then, as I said, the Chinese youth is now going through the streets doing the line dance, cleaning out the shops and collecting the red packets.
So that would be a better time to go and visit family and friends.
Yeah, I think what has been certainly now with because it's Friday, it's a weekend, so there'll be a lot more social. Family visits. We've visited some of our own family. They've come to see us. So they've brought red packets for the children and things like that. So that interaction goes on a social basis, family to family. But we don't have a Chinatown where we have, a gathering of people again. But it is done on a community basis now. It's more private and more family to family, and all the relatives are doing that. And that'll go on, I think, all through this weekend.
Oh, Mr. Sito, I want to thank you for coming in today and discussing with us in great detail and giving us a rich description of the Chinese history in Fiji.
And a happy Chinese New Year
And
to
thank
you,
you.
and we
Happy
wish you
Chinese
all
New
the
Year,
very
and
best
thank
and
you.
a
Yeah.
prosperous 2018.
It was a great pleasure. Thank you.
Well, that's all we have time for tonight. You can check more of the show and others simply by logging on to our website at www.fbc.com.fj. From the rest of the team, Geraldine and myself, have a good evening and a happy Chinese New Year.